My name is Himani. I am presenting the Tokai paper developed in collaboration with Dr. Haruki Takahashi and Dr. Jian Kim. So the motivation for this work lies in the recent advancements happening in low-cost 3D printing that have enabled desktop 3D printers to be a staple in makerspaces and have made them widely accessible. Fused deposition modeling, or FDM, which refers to 3D printing by deposition of material layer by layer, has enabled makers to rapidly iterate their designs, modifying them in the process and creating high-fidelity prototypes of their designs. But this process of try, iterate, and throw away is quite linear if we focus on what is happening to the materials and the objects that are being printed. If we look at the life cycle of plastic filaments in the contemporary FDM process, the material is discarded at various stages of the process because it is deemed as being useless, degraded, or broken. In the prefabrication phase, makers generally store a lot of filament spools hoping to use them, but improper storage can result in degradation of materials that makes them not viable for 3D printing because they cannot be properly extruded through the machine. For example, if PLA is stored improperly, it will become brittle over time. Or PVA, for example, will absorb moisture, creating air bubbles. These degradations are not conducive to the process of 3D printing, and such filaments are discarded due to their uselessness. In the fabrication stage, due to the iterative process encouraged by rapid 3D printing, a lot of failed or unused prints get discarded since makers try new things with each iteration, and each iteration is not necessarily the final product. And lastly, in the post-fabrication stage, once an object has been worn out or is broken, it is only repaired if there is some emotional value attached to it or super expensive material has been used with it. Since the whole point of FDM is rapid desktop manufacturing at low cost, makers often choose to simply reprint a broken object instead of repairing it. So when these materials, objects are discarded, there have been proposed various ways for recycling these materials. However, these machines and processes tend to be either expensive or technically advanced, and hence most of these prints end up in the landfill. A lot of works have also proposed switching to biodegradable materials, as we saw today as well. And some filaments are coming up which are biodegradable, but given the easy availability and ubiquitousness of plastic filaments, we do not see a complete switch happening for quite some time. So it becomes quite important to find ways to make the existing pipelines more circular. Our belief is that material at any stage of its life cycle is valuable, even if it may no longer be used as intended because its primary functionality has been unmade. It does not mean it has no use. So in this work, we focus on the prefabrication phase and propose filament wiring techniques that can be seamlessly integrated into the existing FDM workflow. I mentioned the word unmaking, or the intended use of filaments being unmade. So what is unmaking? In very broad terms, unmaking is this process of decomposition, destruction, unraveling, dismantling, or unprocess of materials, objects, frameworks, schemas, etc. But in our case, we are looking at materials and objects. We accept that degradation, breaking, or disassembly are just parts of the making process. Even though we contribute filament wiring techniques, our overarching goal is to implore the fabrication community to accept and design for the unmaking that happens to the material throughout its life cycle and find value in the material that already exists. As Tony Fry has said, in celebration of creation, destruction is always present. We go a step further and propose leveraging these properties of degraded filaments for their reuse. We are inspired by the philosophies of unmaking, functional destruction, design for decomposition and repair utilized in these works, and this list is not exhaustive at all. While some of these works propose decomposable materials, as I said earlier, replacing low-cost plastic FDM will take some time, and we need to look at what is happening right now. So what is happening right now? In the prefabrication stage, there are various reasons for leftover filaments, accumulation of spools of filament that never get used, improper storage, resulting in some environmental interventions. Even if a filament is used, the last couple of feet of the filament still goes unused, as the length is too short to be pushed through the Bowden tube, resulting in accumulated filament or requiring manual pushing of the filament through the extruder. Makers across the community have been looking for ways to use these leftover filaments, as shown by one Reddit thread here. As an answer to this question, various solutions have been suggested to reuse these filaments, such as using them with a 3D doodle pen, using filament pieces as connectors, aesthetic additions, flexible filaments as footwear straps, or even adding anti-skid functionality. So we propose filament wiring that consolidates these techniques and suggests more, while also providing 3D printed aids for realizing the use of these techniques. As can be seen from the diagram, filament wiring broadly consists of hybrid fabrication techniques such as cutting, shaping, fixing, and using the filaments with other crafts for their reuse. These techniques are such that easy disassembly or unmaking is possible, enabling remaking using the same materials. We consider the unmaking of the material as well as the unmaking of contemporary FDM, remaking it with added seamless workflows for filament reuse. As mentioned before, we classify the different techniques into cutting, fixing, wiring, and shaping. Again, we are using the filaments as they are, leveraging their existing properties, such as the coiling nature of the wire and the thermoplasticity for reshaping, reiterating that the material at any stage is valuable. To aid these techniques, we created scripts to enable creation of frames for fixing or wiring filaments. So a user can provide their geometry and create these frames for wiring filaments. And we also provide a script for creating proxies where we can insert filaments that we need to reshape and use heat, such as a hairdryer or a heat gun, to reshape the filament. The proxy, however, needs to be printed in a material with a glass transition temperature higher than the material we're trying to reshape, because we do not want the proxy itself to change shape. We also have a script that prints various connectors based on the provided geometry that allows connecting various filaments together. So we can utilize filament wiring for rapid prototyping practices, such as shaping the filaments and connecting them to explore a Christmas ornament form factor or even a collapsible shell form factor. We can also use the wired objects as scaffolds for other crafts, such as this woven pen stand or these crocheted baby booties. These techniques encourage reuse of the same materials, that is, disassembly and reassembly in a different form using the same materials. Here, if a design student wants to prototype different forms of a vase, they can create simple frames and a couple proxies, shape their filaments for one form, and then disassemble the filaments and reshape them for another form. Note that all the materials used are the same. The ultimate goal is to use filament wiring to create cycles within the existing making process, enabling iterative reuse of the filaments for various purposes until they're cut so small that the only thing that may be possible is recycling. For example, if we start with a cylindrical wired object, we can later disassemble it and use heat and hand braiding to create a hair accessory. We can reshape the filaments and weave through them to create some woven container. The same filaments can be reused to create some decorative flower that can have some stockings around it, and we can reshape it using heat. The same filaments can also be used for creating a folding fan. Once you've cut it so small that these filaments can also be used for wire-based repair, such as here, I've used it to repair wire-based clasp. And then we can also make jewelry. And ultimately, you've cut the filaments so small that they are now in a conducive state to be shredded and then recycled, possibly. For future work, we are focusing on the fabrication and post-fabrication stage, utilizing the philosophy that material is valuable at all stages. We want to use the property of brittleness of PLA once it degrades to cause predetermined breakage when with an object so that parts may be reused for other purposes. And we are currently working on this. So in summary, unmaking is a process, not just an outcome. So we need to understand how materials change and decay and design with that in mind. Unmaking should be embedded into the design process because it enables design for sustainable prototyping. And unmaking is a catalyst for material innovation because by considering the disassembly and reuse of materials, new possibilities for hybrid craft and material exploration emerge. Thank you so much. I am on the tenure track postdoc job market. Feel free to reach out if you're interested in my work, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
Hi, Leah Beakley from the University of New Mexico. This is such creative and wonderful work. I really appreciate all the possibilities here. I guess one question comes to mind. It seems like the relationship between the tools that you've developed and recycling, is a little bit unclear to me. In the following sense, it seems like you could use brand new filament to do all of this wonderful stuff. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder how you think about, is there a way to connect those two more strongly, or kind of, can you think about more constrained kind of workflows or settings in which there was more of kind of an incentive for people to reuse? Mm-hmm. Like, you've opened up all these wonderful creative possibilities, but again, can we incentivize the reuse part a little bit more?
Right. You're right. We can still use like brand new filament to do all of this. It's a great question. So we tried to go at it thinking that that's something that we can do with leftover filaments. But that is actually, I don't have an answer for that question, but it is a really, really great thought to have in future. Yes?
Yeah, I'm Atul from University of Copenhagen. I have a question about sustainability. It's a great talk. I love it. It's very creative. I also have read all of these papers. Thank you. I have a question about when we thought about this sustainability or reusing of the material, we focus too much on the material side, how much we are reusing it, but we kind of forget about how much energy we are putting into it for making it reusable. Have you done some sort of a study about it, how much energy you are using it for making it reusable? What's the balance between that? Is it actually reusable or not?
Right.
Is it sustainable at the end or not?
Right. We haven't done a user study, but the idea is that we're not trying to modify the material itself. So we don't expect any energy to go into modifying the material to be reusable. The idea is to use it the way it is right now. But a user study would definitely help in this case.
No, because I saw the heat gun in many of your orders, so it consumes a lot of energy.
It should.
Yeah. So that's why I was
You're right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Imani.